I was originally gonna drop a ZZZ video before this, but I guess I'll tide you guys over with some gameplay. So recently, the Gacha space has been experiencing a lot of drama. A lot of this has been centered around ZZZ, and I need to talk to you guys about this. Just like the Dodger Suspect video, this is a super serious topic. So there's gonna be no music, no funny sound effects. We're gonna actually have a serious talk about this because I have some important thoughts I would want to share. And if you want to be notified on when I actually drop my first real ZZZ video, be sure to like the video and subscribe for more Gacha gaming content. Now let's begin. To start off, the first time we've seen so far regarding ZZZ was a short one. Saw it very quickly too. This was regarding Tectone versus Gacha Smack, and they were arguing about the possibility of a Street Fighter collab coming to ZZZ. In summary, they argued in a call about how good of an idea this was, or how bad of an idea this was, and eventually they hashed it out and are now cool again. Now, I'm glad that this situation ended nicely, because this current situation is fresh and new, and it's quite interesting. So let's dive into it. But before I was going to cover this, I wanted to research a bit and understand the situation a bit more. The summary I initially got from what's his name? VXP Fiction. Really cool dude. The summary I got from VXP Fiction was that Hex Juu and Tectone were arguing about ZZZ. And they were arguing about ZZZ, and eventually they came to an agreement about how they feel about the game. And it was supposed to be over from there. However, Mtashed slid in and crashed the fuck out on Tectone about how he was predatory in his debating tactics and about how he was an abuser. Here is what I got after watching the entire call between Tectone and Mtashed, and eventually Hex Juu as well. So, the first thing I noticed was that Mtashed was mixing jokes. Or missing jokes, I don't know why I'm stuttering that so much. Regardless, the first thing that I noticed was that Mtashed was missing jokes. One of his counterpoints to that was that he didn't like how Tectone was joking about him quitting. Meanwhile, he himself said that he is allowed to make that joke about himself. First of all, how dense of a motherfucker do you have to be to say shit like that? How come you are given the God-given right to joke about yourself, but when someone else does exactly what you were doing, all of a sudden he's painting a bad narrative and he's wrong? Dude, seriously. He then said later that he was in fact not quitting these games. Meanwhile, it's pointed out by the chat, by the end of the argument and whatnot, that he was in fact considering and was at the point dropping these games.
That I'll be playing HSR. I'm quitting the game effective immediately. I'm just so sick of this bullshit. I know that you guys probably don't want to hear that, but I'm done. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. See you later. Bye-bye.
So, buddy, please tell me what you were actually trying to say here, because I'm missing something, apparently. Now, later on, he practically says again that nobody is allowed to make jokes like that but him. He even denies this as well. Keep in mind, because he does this a lot. They now bring up the point that Mtashed is a silent quitter. Mtashed himself says that he is, then later on, says that he's not. Then what he proceeds to do is loop this cycle of not being able to decide of whether he's a silent quitter or not. We also see a theme of this throughout the voice call. And to close off this part of the VC, Mtashed said that Tectone's attempt at helping didn't help at all, and it made shit worse for him. So now we've gone over this a bit of the call, I'm going to give my thoughts about it. First of all, why are you only now speaking about this? Yeah, you may have given subtle hints about not liking these jokes, but now you're saying you don't like these jokes, as if we were supposed to pick up on your unreadable hints this entire time. If you have a problem with your friend at the time doing something like this, how about you say, please stop, I don't like this, and go from there. It's not that deep, Mtashed.
he upsets people for content.
So, now we're going into the parts where they talk about how Tectone is allegedly a predator to the space that isn't helping. So, Mtashed, aside from the previous section, also tries to justify his claims by saying that he is a predator to the Gacha space. Not a kid toucher type of predator, but a law of nature type of predator that feeds off of weaker animals. Tectone defends his claims by stating the good he has done, the hundred thousands of dollars he's given, the small creators that he's highlighted and helped raise to stardom, and so on. Mtashed says that he also harmed smaller creators when in reality, some of their takes were just out of touch and just incorrect. Take Bazookas for example, deranged, senile old dude who cannot think of any counterpoints, and when he was facing Tectone in AVC, realized he was wrong, and tried to wave a white flag and flee. Yeah, I guess people aren't allowed to be wrong since they're smaller creators, I guess? Yeah, new trend, guys. I'm always right unless I get tons of subs.
He upsets people for content. Like, when's the last time Tectone made a guide or like helped the community?
Now we're going to talk about the times where Mtashed was being petty and intentionally dense. So to start off, Mtashed throughout the argument was being a hypocrite. He was doing things, but when Tectone was reflecting his actions in a mirror, he started throwing buzzwords at him like narcissist, painting narratives, red herring, etc.
No, I haven't.
Yes, you have. You did it the entire
Then show
time
me.
in the Atsu conversation.
Show me what I've done.
If you can't recognize that, everyone in chat is recognizing it.
Proof is on the burden of the accuser, not the accused. So show me how I twisted your words.
This is exactly how I knew this conversation
So
was
what
going to
you're
go.
saying is you can't provide proof. So now you're going to say, oh my God, guys, he's doing it again. Wah, wah, wah.
You're doing it right now. You're trying to make me sound like a clown.
No, I'm trying to ask for proof.
I'm telling you the proof is right now. What you're doing is the scorched earth stuff I'm talking about. You're doing it right now. Your argument, you argue like Donald Trump does.
Next thing is this. Notice how I have been able to elaborate on two of the topics at hand here. Well, this originally started from how Tectone was supposedly an abuser. Meanwhile, he slowly transitions to other subjects in order to try and make sense of his nonsense. Dude, get a fucking grip. Holy God. Now that we know that this is one of his tactics to prove himself right, let's continue. Mtashed flexes his big muscles and says, be a normal person and talk to me like a normal person. But here's the funny thing. Not only does he say that Tectone's farming this, when Tectone leaves call to not farm this, Mtashed then single target taunts him and says that Tectone knows he's wrong, which is why he left. Which then creates a lose-lose situation, where if he leaves, he's wrong, but if he joins, he's wrong. All because Mtashed's argument is invalid. But that's not all. Like the supposed normal person he is, he spoke for 3 hours about an argument that was already settled. He challenged Tectone to find proof when he couldn't find any himself. He calls Hex and Tech's friendship a Stockholm Syndrome friendship. If you don't know what Stockholm Syndrome is when the person getting abused is attached to the abuser. Oh my God. Anyways, he calls Hex Juu and Tectone's friendship a Stockholm Syndrome friendship after earlier talking about how bad of a person Tectone is. And he also says that some people don't need to justify themselves in some cases just because he himself can't defend his bullshit. But that is still not it. Mtashed is proven wrong heavily at one point, and when he is, he stays silent, and when he speaks again after a little bit, he goes back to calling Tectone all these buzzwords again after, being unable to defend his nonsense. And he also says the same shit whenever Tectone does his method of catching people on their bullshit and not allowing it to slide. Now we're going to one of the meatiest parts of the entire VC. where Mtashed is confirmed by Hex herself on certain things. So, let's do a little bit of a recap. Before Hex joins, Mtashed goes on to say throughout the parts before her arrival that he's not defending Hex Juu. Meanwhile, he proceeds to White Knight by saying Tectone is a predatory debater, and then when he's proven wrong, calls Hex a snake. Now this is when Hex Juu joins. Now Hex immediately joins and says that she didn't need this defending. She admits that she was a tad bit bitter after the argument, but not only did she say on Twitter that she doesn't need people defending her for no reason, but she herself confirmed that she did not want people assuming her feelings or defending her on a cause that doesn't exist.
He's the only person I've ever been able to be 100% honest with. The reason that I like him so much is because he's like I don't need to explain myself to him. You know how you have to explain why you say something to someone when you say something like a little off, a little bit abrasive? I don't have to do that with him, and it's fucking comfortable. There's not a lot of people in this life that allow you to fully speak your thoughts without judgment. And all I've had prior to being a Gacha content creator were friends that would not allow me to speak my mind fully. And privately and publicly, I'm allowed to say what I actually mean. And I don't have to be afraid that like Tectone's going to come after me. Tectone's actually very easy to know. It's easy to know most of the time when you've done something that's fucked up enough for Tectone to come after you. And that's purely when you're being a fucking massive piece of shit.
She even said 8 hours prior to this that she hates when people legitimately paint narratives. Notice how I said legitimately. She hates when people legitimately paint narratives about Tectone, and she hates when people tell her how she feels when she feels the opposite. But to sum up what I got, Mtashed reiterated what he was saying and spammed more buzzwords, and then after that, the VC was done after he was removed. Now that you know what I got from this, I'm going to share my own opinion on this. Now, first of all, let's just say that Hex was abused. Now, this is just a hypothetical. Don't you think that she would tell her husband about shit like that? Don't you think that she would say shit like that online if it was like that? But she didn't. She herself said she was upset afterwards, but also says that she doesn't want people assuming what's happening or how she feels beyond that. Her point is that what she is saying is what she is saying. Don't just, make shit up just to cause conflict between creators. We're going to talk about that a little bit later.
Also, shame on any content creator attempting to use an interaction between two friends because it's a man and a woman where you want to paint me as big bad boogeyman. Shame on you. You're weird as fuck. Like, legit, keep my fucking name out of your mouth. You're so cringe, it's insane. Like, good God. I mean, I hope to God you're embarrassed with yourself because Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ.
Next, I'm gonna go on record and say how I feel about Mtashed. I hated him at first. I hated how his luck was good at HSR and he barely applied it, then gave advice on shit when he himself was struggling. I thought he was unreliable, and that's why I hated him. But things changed when I saw him and Hex beefing for the first time. They had a problem, and actually hashed shit out like normal people, and shit was done. I gained a lot of respect for him because I wanted him to be wrong, but even though he was, he owned up to it. I eventually let my petty anger aside and was willing to accept it. I was willing to accept his content. He also sang the Robin song pretty well. That is the last joke I make, I promise. But now, what I'm getting at here is that I'm disappointed. 2 times now during ZZZ's launch period have people been putting people against each other. First, it was Gacha Smack and Tectone being manipulated by their communities into beefing. Now it's Mtashed trying to paint a bad picture of Tectone. Now, here's what I think. Like Tectone did for Mtashed, some of these CCs need to go out and talk about how stupid their communities were being in trying to pit these guys against each other. The points that some of these CCs that I respect were making were just awful, and this was because they almost let the people do this. We've now seen Mtashed do a mask off, and before this, again, we saw Gacha Smack and Tectone beefing over something the community was manipulating them into arguing about.
You're going to continue to perpetuate the narrative and microanalyze every action between a man and a woman. That's why men and women barely interact on stream anymore, unless it's positive and negative. Case in point, guys. Let me ask you a question. When was the last 10 stream that you saw on stream between a man and a woman and it wasn't heavily scrutinized by the internet?
So yeah, the reason why I'm even talking about this is because the gacha community has had an unacceptable behavior. Some of these idiots need to get put in their place and get told what they are doing is wrong. Anyways, like, comment, subscribe, check out my community tab, check out my Twitter. I'll see you guys in the next one.
You said don't send hate his way, but your fans still did. Okay, so here's the thing. If you think one person can be responsible for every action their fans committed, then why is Kai the most beloved streamer when he's brought PS5s into New York City and caused riots in the street? It's because creators aren't control for what their community does. Irrational people will do irrational things. And if you're telling me that I have to be a rational person and control every irrational person, well, I'm sorry, I'm not a jail warden. I don't run an insane asylum. It's just an impossible standard to hold for creators.